Welcome to the Micro-Module series, Understanding Bias in Epidemiological Studies. In this module, we will be focusing on selection bias caused by loss to follow-up. The objectives of this module are to explain how loss to follow-up may lead to selection bias, illustrate it with an empirical cohort study, introduce how to address the bias, and explain its difference from the bias arising from inappropriate sampling procedure. In a study with follow-up, for example, cohort study or clinical trial, participants may withdraw or drop out during the follow-up for various reasons. Common reasons include migration, refusal to continue because of worsening health condition, and death. Bias occurs when people staying in the study are different from those who left. As a result, the final study population becomes unrepresentative of the target population. This is similar to healthy worker effect and non-response bias in a way. Let's look at an empirical example from a study evaluating the effectiveness of a weight management program. The study began with 881 participants. After 2 years of intervention, 430 were still in the program, while 451 were lost to follow-up. Among those lost to follow-up, 174 had supplementary data from electronic health records, or EHR for short, enabling an augmented analysis. So, 2 analyses were conducted, complete case analysis and augmented analysis. In the complete case analysis, only the 430 participants retained in the study are included. The augmented analysis included not only the 430 participants who were retained in the study, but also the 174 who were lost to follow-up, but had supplementary data, bringing the total to 604 participants. In the complete case analysis, the average BMI reduction was 11.2 kilograms per square meter, whereas in the augmented analysis, it dropped to 8.6 kilograms per square meter. The difference in BMI change is likely because individuals with poorer weight loss outcomes were more likely to quit, resulting in an overestimation of the weight loss effect in the complete case analysis. In other words, loss to follow-up led to biased results in this example. So, how to deal with bias caused by loss to follow-up? First, try to prevent loss to follow-up in the first place. One approach is to minimize the number of follow-up sessions. The fewer the sessions, the lower the burden on participants, making it more likely that they will stay in the study until the end. It is also helpful to provide incentives for attending every session. Even small rewards can go a long way in keeping participants motivated and engaged. In addition, it is important to keep detailed and up-to-date contact information for all participants. If someone misses a follow-up, make every effort to re-establish contact. Sometimes a simple phone call, text, or reminder letter can bring them back into the study. If those preventive measures fail and a participant is truly lost to follow-up, the next step is to try using supplementary data sources to obtain their information so that they can still be included in the analysis. For example, electronic health records, as we saw in the previous example, can provide valuable data for those who dropped out. This allows researchers to still include them in the analysis and reduce potential bias. The final approach is to use statistical methods. For example, conducting multiple imputation to replace the missing data of those lost to follow up with plausible values. This allows those participants to still be included in the analysis, helping to minimize bias. Let's wrap up by comparing bias caused by loss to follow-up and bias arising from inappropriate sampling procedure from 4 different perspectives. First, when does it occur? Bias caused by loss to follow-up occurs during the data collection stage, after the sample is selected. In contrast, bias arising from sampling procedure happens during the sample selection stage. Second, study designs affected bias caused by loss to follow-up affect studies with follow-up, such as cohort studies and clinical trials. Bias arising from sampling procedure, on the other hand, can occur in all types of study designs, including cross-sectional studies and case control studies. Third, cause of bias in case of bias caused by loss to follow-up. Bias occurs when those who are lost to follow-up differ systematically from those who stay in the study. For example, if sicker participants are more likely to leave the study. For bias arising from sampling procedure, the problem comes from an inappropriate sampling method, where the selected sample doesn't accurately represent the target population. Finally, how to address it to reduce bias caused by loss to follow-up. The best approach is to prevent loss to follow-up from happening. If prevention fails, researchers can use supplementary data sources like electronic health records or apply statistical methods such as multiple imputation. To address bias arising from sampling procedure, use probability sampling methods to ensure every member of the target population has a fair chance of being selected. Okay, in this module we discussed how selection bias can arise from loss to follow-up and the strategies to address it. In the next module, we will introduce selection bias caused by lack of allocation concealment. Thank you for listening.